Welcome to another Loser's Lunch, our weekly exploration of and in excellence. We missed last week because of Labor Day. Sorry about that. Anyway, that was a little riff on Spanish Fly off of Van Halen 2. Wasn't sort of a faithful rendition. Then segue right into DOA, which is Dead or Alive. The reason for it is we're going to find out in about 20 hours, probably more like 19 and a half, a little less than one business day. Are we dead or alive? Is the economy dead or alive? Is inflation dead or alive? It all remains to be seen. I'll tell you what, read a bunch of articles over the weekend that would suggest that if inflation is dead. And was just having a one-on-one, as a matter of fact, and whereby we were talking quite a bit about this number tomorrow and what it's going to look like and why it's so important, and is the Fed chasing ghosts, and so on and so forth. And, at the end of the day, for me, I used a couple of examples. We looked at some houses that we were familiar with and looked at the sale history of those houses. And I've talked about this before. Is like there's no such thing as a right or a wrong call. It's all about timing in the markets. And this is a good example about that. So one of the houses that we looked at, the house sold in December of 2003 for $275,000 as an example. It then sold again in, I think, 2012 for $199,000. So about $75,000 less. The new owner of the home had put about $100,000 into it, which really made the basis of the home into that. Good morning. Afternoon, actually, 12:03. As you say, morning. Well, for some of our viewers, it could be morning. So good point there, Alan. So if you go back to $2,002, the cost basis of that house was $375,000. If you adjust it for the new owner in 2012 or whatever the year was, I think it was 12, the cost basis was more like $300,000. Ended up selling the house, hey Carlos, for $400,000. So when you say, and it was 12, so and the house resold in 16. So you look at it and you say, well, bought the house for 200, put 100 into it, made 100,000 in 4 years, not a bad return. And I would tend to agree with that, right? But what if you were the owner in 2002? What if that original owner never sold the house, put $100,000 into it, now has $375,000 into the house, and sold it for $400,000 10 years later? That's such a great return. And it really dawned on me in that conversation. If we, for a second, think about, for those of us who are around or old enough to remember, what life was like in 1998, in 1996, in 2002. What the cost of things was then. Cost of things were then. And what they are now. And forget about the noise around 2008, from 06 to, call it 16, 17. Do things really seem as expensive as we think they are at the moment? So went online and also Googled this arbitrarily, a Nissan Titan truck. MSRP on the base model, no options, in 2017 was 28.9. Today, I think it was 38. So about 6%, probably more like 5% price appreciation from 2017 to present day. But then just for the hell of it, I went back to 2012 and Googled that. Guess what I found out? The difference in the cost between a Nissan Titan from 2012 to 2017 moved by $500. So if you do a 10-year look in the base price, true, Darla, thank you, it appreciated by essentially that same amount, about $9,000. And when you push back over a 10-year period, a much more modest price appreciation. So I'm just wondering, folks, all this inflation that we're fighting, and by the way, I've used the same example about the house that we bought here. I paid 20% less than the previous two owners paid for this house. Using 2015 as a basis, okay. Now, I've experienced theoretically, because by the way, I haven't sold my house, so who knows really what I'd sell it for. But if I believe Zillow, I've experienced about a 35% price appreciation on my house since November of 2020, which is when I bought it. By the way, I call bullshit on that because after the renovation, I'd be lucky to make 15% on my money here. So still a decent return on a house I've owned for not quite 2 years, but relative to the stock market, not necessarily great, unless you extract out how everyone got murdered this year in the market, theoretically. But if let's just assume that the house is worth 35% more, just for the heck of it. Well, 35% minus the 20%, up 15%. I'm oversimplifying back of the napkin sort of stuff. Is 15% on your money in 7 years really that great? No. I'll answer that for you. And by the way, I'm just taking a mark of 2015 because that's the mark that's on Zillow. What if I take a mark of 2012, which likely the house was worth the same amount of money in 2012 and possibly 2009 and maybe 2006. So now the house is worth 15% more in 15, 20 years. Speaking to a buddy in Broward County, they're saying that those houses are getting back to 100%. I can't wait until they put all those houses on the market, Alan. It's coming like a freight train. Choo choo. We called all this last November and everybody said I was crazy. We got 5 years worth of inventory. Now they're talking 8 months. Wait until it's negative 8 months. I hate to go dark here, but I mean, what's the Fed fighting? Are they fighting prosperity? Do they not want us to do well and be happy? Because I got to tell you something. I'm getting ready to put my New Jersey house on the market. I will lose money on it. Guaranteed. I have never gotten back to the 2003-04 valuation that house had. Are there outliers? There's outliers to everything. So I get it. Prices of real estate in Manhattan were, by the way, pre-COVID were crazy. $5,000 a foot. I don't know why anybody would pay $5,000 a foot to live anywhere, when you could basically build a palace for $300 a foot, $400 a foot. Don't get on me about that. How about this? A really, 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 really great house. Sure, when you start doing stupid things, I get it. I get how the price of the square foot could go parabolic, right? Holy cow, the countertops in the kitchen I just built are it's the most expensive marble known to man. There's 4 slabs a year that they create, and it's $49 million a linear foot, for this marble. Then sure, yeah, I get it. But I mean, just in terms of building a well above average kitchen, a well above average bathroom, a well above average office or whatever, what are we talking about? So anyway, I don't believe it. So Jenna, if you could put the link up, I don't even know if you even want to put Zero Hedge, which I love, which there are folks that poo-poo Zero Hedge. They, they're doomsdayers. I'll say this, and it's not Zero Hedge. I saw a bunch of articles this weekend that came out, and credit to Frank the Tank, Frankie Wholesale, for sending me this link. They're saying, so when do we cut rates? So for the record, I went on there and I said, and I've been saying, I'm still saying Q1, March meeting. I don't think they'll do intra-month. February is my month, but it's an intra-month. I don't think. Here's a good chart. I saw a lot of articles this weekend where I think it was Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, folks like that, investment banks like that, talking certainly about this inflation report could be surprisingly bad. I mean, I'm even hearing the word deflation, which if you're listening to some of what, and the Zero Hedge article talks about deflation, it speaks to what I'm talking about. I mean, by the way, if you knock 10% off the value of the house that I bought, then I am not getting the return on my investment in real estate that I should be getting by the time this time next year or the year after. I talked about it in one of my minutes about how some of the inflation data abroad hasn't looked great the last, week or so. Gas prices, which are a huge component of this, is going to help the number. Real estate, which is a big component of it's going to hurt the number just because it's slow to turn those prices around. And again, prices of what? Where they should have been anyway? I don't know. Look at the article. Come to your own conclusions. Remember, figures lie and liars figure. So it's hard for me to say with absolute certainty, me too, that this is going to be a stinker. I mean, I will tell you, Jenna, do you remember what we said on it was? Yeah, it was industrial production in Ireland was down 22%. And I think inflation, the month-over-month inflation number was like -4. Yo. I don't know. I just don't see the inflation that everybody is seeing. Do I see it in a Lamborghini and a Ferrari? Yes. Do I see it in other used cars, particularly SUVs? Yes. Do I see it in the cost of scotch and watches? Now, by the way, you want to talk about a correction. Rolexes are down about 20% month over month. I mean, does that sound like the Fed needs to keep fighting? Well, yeah, but those prices are still up. They're still up year over year. What did they do 5 years ago? I think that what we're forgetting is how bad 2008 was. When I think it was 12 million people lost their jobs. I think that what we're forgetting is just when we finally started to get our heads above water, 11 fucking years later, 2019, that a year from there, another like 10 million people lost their jobs. There's a restaurant opening. Scott, are you watching? What's the name of Marcus's restaurant? I just followed it on Twitter. Maybe I could find out. So, by the way, if you're in the New York area, let me see if I can get the name of the restaurant. So Marcus Glocker, super talented chef, won 2 Michelin stars at Gordon Ramsay when it was there in the London. Then opened Batard with Koloman, Kololomon. Man, excuse me. One of James Beard opened Batard in Tribeca. I think there's an O in there. I think it's Kololomon. Put an O between the L and the M. So one of James Beard opened up this place called Batard with the front of house from Danielle and the money behind Nobu, Drew Neaporn. And they earned a Michelin star there. Super talented chef, super good guy in the kitchen. Doesn't sort of, oh, hey, let's set it up and then go on a world tour. His restaurant was devastated by COVID and essentially hasn't cooked in a consistent place professionally since COVID. Now, look, maybe he's setting this up. I mean, you don't leave a restaurant that you worked your entire life to build if shit's not really bad. And that sort of was Batard. That was his dream, to start a restaurant. We talked about it when he was at Gordon Ramsay. Starts this restaurant, gets awesome reviews. It's an awesome restaurant. COVID devastates them. He ends up moving on. Let's just say that this restaurant takes off, and God willing, it does. And he could just increase his prices day after day, minute after minute. In fact, while you sit down and you order, the server comes back with the meal and says, I just want you to know that we're actually going to charge you 5% more for this. I mean, you know, the cost of poker is going up. All that'll do is get back all the lost time from COVID. Do we not think that there are millions of Americans are still not where they were in 2019? And do we think that there aren't millions others that still aren't where they were in 2007? I know people, educated people, successful people that aren't doing as well as they were doing in 2004 and 5 and 3 and 7 and 8. There's a part of me that makes me wonder if they want us to be successful. Because we could sit here and obsess about what the price of things were. I didn't know many miserable people the last 2 years in many of the circles that I travel in. that were complaining about everything. They made a little more money to pay for the fact that things were a little bit more expensive. That's how our economy works. The Fed's mandate is not 0% inflation. So tomorrow's the day. I'm hearing that business is improving. I'm hearing a lot of great things about from a lot of the people that I'm talking to, whether here at EPM or our brokers. Business is good. Folks have adjusted. If this report disappoints and rates rally and it paves the way for the Fed to stop obsessing, we could have a nice run on our hands. So, in that regard, I'm really excited about the prospects of the outcome from this report. Now, what else is coming out this week? Well, so we got some auctions today, and those always help to sort of establish the mindset of the market. Tomorrow we got Fannies that roll, of course, at 8:30 CPI. Cleveland Fed at 11. Wednesday mortgage apps, PPI, some gas inventory numbers. I'll get to that in a sec. Keep that up there, Jenna, so I can answer this. Thursday, we've got Bank of England. Retail sales, import-export prices, Philly Fed, New York Fed. Of course, claims. We roll Class B on Friday, rolls Class A tomorrow. Then next week, we have, I don't know. This app is failing. I don't know what we have next week. I'll bring up another. Why can't I get next week? Oh, wait a minute. I do have next week. Housing starts on Tuesday, meaning, rate decision on Wednesday. They're going to look at the CPI. That's why it's a super important report. KC Fed and then market PMI on Friday. Well, we don't think, so we know that last month disappointed, right? The market is expecting a negative number, just for the record. That makes this report a little bit dangerous. The annual, they're expecting to come in at 8.1. It was 8.5. Monthly, they're expecting 0.3. So how bad do I think it can be? The annual one is tough for me, Matt, because I admittedly haven't done a deep enough dive. So let's just talk anecdotally here for a second. We know that prices started to rise last summer. That's why this CPI report has to keep getting better and better and better. Because now here's what you have, okay? You have the comp, which is prices were going up, and the reality, which is prices are today going down. So that is where these numbers could start getting bad. Now, that doesn't mean that prices aren't higher year over year necessarily, right? It's just the directionality of it. I think we could see a number of sub-8, all right? And I absolutely think that the monthly is where I think the big miss could lie. I don't know why we wouldn't be negative month over month potentially. So that could be where the big miss is. Is this the report that shows deflation? Boy, I don't know. We'll see. I guess I'm sort of saying that I am less resolute than some of the calls that the market is getting. I think it may take the September report next month or the October report in November. What I've said in general, Matt, is I think we need 60 days to sort of let the data marinate a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean that this can't happen tomorrow, but I think that 60 days is my comfortable window from a probability standpoint. Here's what I know. So I'm not dodging this question. It's just that these numbers are so unreliable. Yes, I think that's so I think you're going to have the push and pull of gas and real estate. And I'm just holding on the real estate piece, Matt. That's my concern. Everything other than real estate, I'm choo-choo. I know that this data is, the underlying data is problematic and troubling and bad, arguably. So when you put gas on top of it, this absolutely could be a 7577 number. It's the real estate component that worries me a little bit. I don't know that we've seen. It's sort of like the impact that gas had on last month, right? It was too soon. Real estate is too soon. If we hit 7.5 this month, then look out below, because we could be looking at, 6s and 5s by next month, the month after, potentially. Because here's the other thing that I've been saying is the psychology of all of this stuff. See, I will argue to the maybe not to the death, that this has not been demand pull inflation, that perceived demand is just more about scarcity, okay? And I believe that what you're seeing in the market supports that. Folks didn't pay more for a house or a watch or a car because they had the money and or wanted to, per se, in a keeping up with the Joneses absolute sort of way. I think it was because they thought it was going to be worth more tomorrow. And the reason why I believe what you're seeing now substantiates that is the precipitous correction. I mean, it has been a breathtaking correction. I think the number was 90% of listings are going for under ask now. And I mean, think about this. My house next door, my neighbor next door sold his house in a pocket listing, 3 offers, essentially before it hit the market. How about this? The GM said to me in passing one day, I have a buyer for your house. I said, but house isn't even for sale. Now, maybe I should have taken it because I put some stupid number on it. Just because it's like I couldn't take the guy seriously. And we're 60 days removed from that. To what now where inventory's on the rise, MBA apps on purchases was down a bit, either last week or the week before, even though inventories were up. Now, again, I'm also hearing that activity is brisk. So there's a little bit of a juxtaposition of that. And to now where houses are sitting and going for under ask. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's only going to get more competitive as more houses go on the market. When we talk about Zillow being offside in terms of home prices, what happens when they decide to put their 3 million, 4 million houses on the market? I don't know. But here's what I do know. I do know that the two previous owners of my house here were pissed off that they sold those houses for what they did. So had they never sold those houses, they'd just be like moderately happy with what the house is worth today. So I think that's an interesting aside, little sidebar, side story to what's happening. Matt, in any way, shape, or form, 331 is not the level here. That's not where tens should be during a recession. And here's the other thing I've posed as a scenario. If Q3 is negative, and I just don't see how it can't be. The same way I said I don't see how Q2 couldn't be negative, and it was. I don't see how Q3 can't be negative. The data is worse. The ISM data, the Fed district data is worse than it was in January and in Q1 and in Q2. So, and we're certainly not increasing inventories. So I'd imagine that inventories isn't going to buoy this number. The consumer sort of made Q2 look a little bit better than it otherwise might have been. So if, and it is an if, this is not a Mancuso's, guarantee, but if Q3 is negative, and now we've printed 3 negative quarters, is Q4 negative just because, right? Is Q4 negative because, holy shit, this is getting real. I better save my pennies. And I'm certainly not going to create more inventory. And by the way, but here's the other thing. These layoffs haven't even hit yet. I went on, so here's what I'm going to say. And I'm just saying this for context, for those who are watching. And maybe you're new. I was on CNBC in August of 2005, and the Fed did the same fucking thing that they did here. I said that the Fed keeps raising rates. What this housing bubble was driven by the fact that houses that people wanted didn't exist. I did not believe that there was a housing bubble per se, meaning the prices were justified and affordable. They were just bigger houses, not for everybody. Just because somebody was building a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house, because they didn't want that 1,800 square foot Cape Cod or that 2,200 square foot split level. There was this appetite for center halls, which really didn't exist in a big way. So you have these bigger, nicer, newer houses that are more expensive, but are they really? Again, the answer I give, my house in Wayne, New Jersey, what I put into it and what I paid to make it a center hall, I've lost money on that house. Net, 20 years later. It's the same thing here. People want specialty things, a home theater, a bigger kitchen, whatever, your bag is, a lagoon in the backyard. That doesn't necessarily make the house more expensive. It makes it cost more. Those are two different things that get blended into the money, get blended into these statistics. We have more dual income homes than we've ever had. We have more self-employed people than we ever had, who are arguably paying less taxes than W-2 people pay. We have more home bodies because of COVID. If you don't spend $5,000 or $10,000 a year going on a family vacation, you could put it into your house. You could put it into your car. The dynamic of how we consume and how we spend and how we behave, totally different. That skews these numbers. I could tell you this. The house we bought in Florida is more affordable than the house we had in New Jersey, but it's significantly more expensive. What does that tell you? It tells you I don't pay 11% state income tax in New Jersey. That's for one. What does that mean? It's not what you make, it's what you keep. I don't know. So we'll see. I'm about ready to sign off here. If anybody else has any questions, pop one in real quick. I'll give it a go. Otherwise, get those tickler files ready. I'm going to tell you there's about a 65% chance that this number helps. If this number helps, the Fed has said that it's not one report. So I don't think that this takes us to the promised land, but I think it sets us up for a run. Where do we go? You know, probably a break. Thank you, Jackie. Probably a break of 3. Like if we see negative 7.5, I would think we break 3 here. There's a lot of people selling bonds that are offside. Here's the other thing I'd like to know. You know, 10-year boon, not in real time, but is at like 1.7. Now, I know it was negative at one point, but what's really triggered this run-up is inflation in Germany and in Europe. Well, I mean, I don't know. Their 10-year bond is at 1.7. Why are we at 3.3 based on German inflation? I don't know. I start getting all conspiracy theory. Well, you know, things are more affordable than we think they are. Go on Amazon, try to buy a TV. Costs less than it did 12 years ago. Go try to buy a computer. Costs less. Go on Google, okay? Let's just see, just for Ford Mustang MSRP 2008. Base was $19,650. 2022. Base is $27,000. $9,000 more. So what's 9,000 divided by 19? 47%. 47%. Now, obviously, this is back of the napkin. It's not exact math. You got to compound and all this other stuff. Divided by 14. 3.3 a year. So what does that come out to? 275? The inflation on a Mustang over a 14, 15-year period? Guess what? That's the 2% they're looking at. Ford Mustang. Let just for the heck of it. Now, by the way, I'm doing this on the fly. MSRP 1990. I can give you the answer to this one, folks, because we had one. Goes back too far. It won't tell me. I think that the 5.0 GT that my father bought was like 21 grand all in 1990. And we want to talk about inflation. That a base Mustang today is 28,000. I'm not saying that it doesn't cost more to live today than it did when I was a kid or before I was born. I get it. You know, a loaf of bread, gallon of milk, stick of butter, whatever the cost of that stuff is. But we also have to look at how we consume, our insatiable appetite. We've got 4 iPhones in our house. Maybe that's why my dollar doesn't go as far. We had a rotary phone hanging on the wall in my kitchen growing up. All right, strap in, 8:30 tomorrow morning. Hey, if we're not connected on Instagram, El Presidente _ oh, yeah, there it is. EPM on Instagram. I did my first wine video yesterday. So what we're going to try to do is sort of do a couple videos. The golf videos have been great. I got like 10,000 views on one of the golf videos with the kids. We're going to start doing like bomb squad golf and bomb squad baseball, just hitting bombs, because who doesn't like that? Try to get with a couple of the pros here at Isleworth, get some content. Sam and Patrick, shout out to them. Patrick, until John Rahm had the low round of the day, shot 9 under. Sam, I think, was either 5 or 6 under on the day yesterday. Real strong finish. Choo-choo, Frank. Real strong finish by our boys. They're in Chicago this weekend. But we're going to do some wine, some cigars, some golf, some baseball. We'll do some golf with Thomas, some baseball with Nick. Going to put him on the gun, see what his exit velocity is like as he works his way back. Choo-choo, Shalanda. So we're going to try to do a lot of fun content. Wine is a passion, just as music. Thank you, Johnny. So we're going to just do some fun content. I said when I moved down here, I'm bringing 1984 back. What happened to loving life? Can we love mortgages and real estate and insurance and life and enjoy doing it with people that we enjoy doing it with? Let's have some fun. Till next week. Choo-choo. Thanks, everybody, for the feedback.